You know that feeling when the lights flicker, the radio crackles, and something steps just out of sight? Well, that's the kind of horror this game captures, like stepping into a nightmare from the 1980s. Well, join me as I take a look at the game Don't Look Back. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips, with a slightly scary horror vibe. Now, recently I got a package in the post from a company called Blacksite Studios with a selection of games, most of them with a bit of a horror vibe to them as well. Now, they all look like great, amazing games, and like I said, I'll give them mentions at the end, but one did catch my eye, especially for this time of year, and it's called Don't Look Back. Now, I'm not a massive horror aficionado, but I do like watching my horror films, and there's quite a few from the 80s that I used to like watching, and this kind of channels a lot of that. So it channels like some of those classic 80s tropes from horror movies, but also channels some of the more later stuff like Stranger Things and whatever. So I thought, you know what, I'll have a look at this game. The art in it is incredible. All the books actually from Blacksite Studios, really well done, really well laid out. A lot of heart and soul have gone into these, but I thought I'll just pick one for Halloween and talk about it, and that's why I'm looking at Don't Look Back. Now, the game itself centres around a made-up town called Northwood. If you're familiar with Hawkins from Stranger Things, you will be right at home with this place. Again, maybe all American towns and cities are the same kind of vibe, I don't know. Though it has many similarities to Hawkins, it also has its own differences as well. Now, there's a nice bit of lore about the city's founding, how it came about, and there's also an add-on expansion book called 1698, which I've got up here, and that kind of explores the original sort of settlement in the old days when the British occupied it and they had a fort. That's quite cool if you like Silver Bayonet. A lot of food for thought for scenarios and adventures using this game system and its background for Silver Bayonet. Might find myself doing that. Quite clever. I like that. Good job, Peach. At the very centre of the forest of Northwood, there's something known as the Dark Heart, as like a stone circle sort of boundary around it. Don't go in the centre. A thing known as the Veil. Again, the book explains all this. The Veil is like somewhere between the other world and the world that we live in, and there's things known as the others. These could easily be misconstrued as forest spirits, ghosts, demons, aliens. There's even an alien landing in 1953. The lore covers that as well. So you can throw all sorts of fun in there, depending on what kind of like narrative you want to run, what kind of horror movie you want to reenact. So when I was reading through, I was getting like strong vibes of, oh, this feels like Halloween, this feels like Friday the 13th. Oh no, this feels more like Silent Hill. So there's all the things in there that you'd be familiar with, like I said, Stranger Things. Now, the boundary is patrolled by park rangers. They are aware of the others and the Veil and all the weirdness that goes off, and they kind of keep tourists away. But regardless, it's not a great place to hang. And over the years, a few of these spirits, others, have migrated into the city. Some of them being quite kind and friendly spirits, just get on with their daily life, want to experience humanity. And others, well, the killers, they just want to terrorize the local population, probably for cutting down trees and making it an industrialized area, which isn't great when you're kind of enjoying the forest of Northwood, I suppose. Now, the game itself revolves around a bunch of characters, 9 in particular, that are named characters that you play as. Now, you can, I'll throw this out there now, you can custom create your own, so you can put in your own sort of story threads. But all these characters have their own strengths and weaknesses. You got your classic sort of archetypes like the jock, the nerd, the sort of like silent stranger, the weird kid, the cheerleader. So you've got all those. Science professor, park ranger. Obviously, there's always going to be some kind of like law enforcement element in there as well. So some of these are teens, some of these are adults. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses, which is good fun. And you get to play as them. Personally, if I want to make up my own and reenact, let's say, Stranger Things, I'll go to Crooked Dice, get a bunch of the Stranger Things characters and play some games with them instead. Now, one thing I really like that Blacksite Studios have done is on their website, they also have the characters you can buy. You can get physical prints, you can have the STLs if you want to, but they're packaged in a VHS box, very similar to how Crooked Dice do their stuff as well. And inside there, you get like your character cards and upgrade cards and stuff like that. So you do have the actual characters you can play in the game and get the physical prints of, as well as the STLs, if you have a 3D printer. But that's really cool. And then, yeah, play through as those. Again, it's a story thread. It's got its own sort of narrative that runs through it. So I guess the idea is like you are playing a Scooby-Doo gang, but more serious and more refined. However, regardless of characters and setting, Don't Look Back is just a really fun way of being able to play some fun horror games, as well as cater it to whatever you want to do. So if you want to reenact some of those movies from the 80s or wherever, the game literally allows you to do that. And I think that's its strength as well. You've got this cool narrative that you can play, but you also got a really fun sort of game system that allows you to recreate your own sort of horror stories like Peachy taking on Mike Myers, not the Austin Power one. He's Mike Myers, isn't he? I think so. Now, like any other miniatures game, you go through the process of setting up the game. So that's like getting your characters together, or calling them up as it's called, organising your plot, which is the scenario. You can also make your own scenarios as well. So there's a whole section at the back which talks about custom creating your own plots, but there's a whole bunch to play through as well, which is really, really good. Then, of course, you move on to picking your killer. There's a whole bunch to pick from, or varying different vibes from different movies. So there's kind of like the Jason Voorhees style one, the Mike Myers one, the Leatherface one, etc. There's loads. But you can also make up your own as well, depending on which kind of movies you're into. If there's like some really fun B-rate movie, like I want to create that character. What I do like as well, again, they do the VHS box set for the killer. What I like about this set is it has two bodies to pick from, boiler suit, farming kind of outfit like dungarees and a jumper, but you've got a selection of weird heads and a selection of horrible murder weapons. So you can just swap and change or kit bash however you want your monster to be, which I think is really, really good fun. But again, you can, I say monster killer, I suppose they are monsters for some of them, but yeah, you literally free reign to come up with what you want. Some of the killers, depending on how you go about picking them, have their own strengths and weaknesses as well. So some might be better at like picking certain types of characters, or at least like taking them on. So yeah, they operate differently in the game, depending on which ones you pick. But before we move on talking about the game, what I do want to do is quickly paint up one of the killers. So I've decided to paint one in the boiler suit, but I've used the same colours and then just mixed them around a bit on the other one. So I've got two killers done now, but using the same guide, if that makes sense. Now, as a member of the Army Painter Factory team, I will be using nothing but Army Painter in my guides, and all the tools that go with that. I have an affiliate link in my description, so if you are interested in getting some stuff, you will get like 5% off your paints as well. So, you know, if you want to save a bit of pennies, do use the affiliate link, and obviously I get some kickback from that as well. So do consider using that. But yes, let's crack on and paint. For this particular guide, I'm going to start with a black undercoat, because the first thing I'm going to do is use a dark blue. Here I'm using deep ocean blue. This is for a nice blue boiler suit kind of colour. I mean, you could do green if you wanted to. There's many choices of boiler suits. Now I'm using a dry brush here to apply my base coat. It just gives it a smoother finish. It's kind of an overbrush, so there will be some areas that are quite dark in the recesses, but for the most part, it's more like a base coat with a bigger brush. Then I'm going to get some thunderous blue. I'm just going to give this a bit of a dry brush over the actual boiler suit. So this is to pick out the raised areas, like the folds of the cloth. There's quite a fair few creases and folds on this model, so it's just a really nice way of picking out those highlights with minimal effort, and it also makes the material look a little bit threadbare and old and used as well. Then I'm going to pick out the boots. Here I'm just going to use some dark olive. Again, you can paint them black, you can paint them lighter brown, whatever colour you really want to. He's a dark and brooding killer, so he's going to wear dark and brooding colours. So what I'm going to do here is use a colour called Mocha Skin. So it's a little bit darker than Paratrooper Tan. It gives it a bit more of a decomposed kind of look. I know he's probably not decomposed, but I want my killer to look a bit more monstrous. So I'm just going to go around and apply a couple of coats of that. It's a really nice colour actually. It's kind of a coffee colour, best way to describe that. So over the black undercoat, you might want to do 2 coats. So this is just applying a second coat here. Honestly, it's up to you how many coats you want to do. 2's more than enough. You could just leave it 1 and do a wash and type after. And obviously, depending on the weapon, you'll probably need to apply some form of metal to it. So I'm just using some gunmetal here for the knife. Again, if there's an axe or a club or something like that, or a mallet, you might want to add a bit of silver to it as well as some wood. So what I'm going to do now is apply a shade. So here I'm going to use some deep shade from AK. This is Pure Grime. Now I apply it quite neatly initially, then I add a bit of water whilst it's on the model. This just helps it flow. It also gives me room to see where it's pooling a bit more, and then I can just like add a little bit of water to that and spread it around a bit. But really what you're trying to do here is just get some brown or some dirty kind of shade in the recesses and add a bit of depth and shadow. Also, what I like to do once I've applied it is, again, remove some of that, do a bit of wash, go around, soak off any excess, especially if it's pooling around the legs a bit too much. But this is going to give his boiler suit a nice dirty look. Now, once it's all dry, you can add a bit more of a dry brush if you want to, just to pick out some of those raised edges. Again, it makes the clothing look a little bit darker, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted to look a little bit grimy and dirty because he is a horror movie killer. So I'm just going around picking out those highlights with the dry brush, but you can also do it with a brush by hand, so like a bit more of a traditional highlight. Here I'm doing jaggedy highlights, so it looks a little bit more threadbare and torn and tattered. Then just re-tidy up some colours, so I'm just going to go for the skin. Really the point of the tidy up is just to re-layer, but only on the raised bits, so it's kind of like a highlight, so I'm avoiding going on the cracks and stuff, but just picking out those extremities, cheeks, nose, obviously a big bold head there, so I need to layer that a bit. Ears, and there's things like on the hands, like the knuckles, any veins you want to pick out. Entirely up to you. You don't have to go too mad. The beauty of using the initial base paint as your highlight, because that shade's darkening it down a bit as well. This stage, totally optional. I'm just highlighting up with some amber skin. This is the next colour along from mocha skin. And again, all I'm really doing here is just picking out those raised areas. Not as much as I did before with the tidy up stage, just little bits here and there like nose, cheeks, nostrils, maybe like around the lips and stuff like that. Again, knuckles as well if you want to. Like I said, this is totally optional. You don't have to do this. One thing I do like to do is add a little bit of black. So you can use grim black, matte black, thin down, whatever. Some places just need a little bit more help or definition between those textures, so whether that's between like the skin and the boiler suit or whatever, just to help bridge the gap. Then to make my killer feel a little bit more dirty, I'm just going to get some mid-battle dress and dry brush that around the lower parts of the legs. Now initially when you do the dry brush, it can look a bit chalky, a little bit messy, depending on how much of a dry brush you're doing, how much you've removed. Totally fine, it's weathering, it's mud, but what I like to do is just thin down that colour as well and just apply it around the base and in some of those deeper recesses. It's kind of a glaze as well, so it'll get rid of some of that chalkiness, but also it will just help blend it in between the cloth and the kind of dirty effect that you're going for. Now, like any good horror movie killer, you want some blood on their weapons and maybe on their boiler suits or clothing. So what I'm going to do here is sponge that on initially, so whether that's on the axe or the boiler suit. You will notice I've got a different model here. This is the other option, so using very similar colours. I forgot to press record on the last one. I noticed that after I was editing, so I'm doing the sponging on this guy. Again, on the hands. Anyway, you could do it by hand. You don't have to use the sponge. It's entirely up to you. This is one of the new Army Painter foam brushes that they're bringing out. What you can do as well is, if you really want to, tear a little bit off so you've got a bit more of a corner hard edge there. So if you want to get into some of those nooks and crannies, you can do it that way. Normally, if I can't get to it with a sponge brush or whatever, I will just use a brush itself and just add the odd little bit extra here and there, as well as some more streaks on the axe. But yeah, just sponge on some blood, make it look like a bit of arterial spray. And now for the face, I thought it looks like he's wearing someone else's face. So I'm looking for a greeny kind of yellow colour, just to look a little bit more like decomposed skin. So it's grim, I know, but once I've applied that on, I'm just going to like use my finger, rub off some of the areas, kind of acts as a highlight as well. But yeah, it just gives a little bit more different colour to that facial area. But yeah, it gives a general gist that it looks like they're wearing someone's decomposed face. Ugh. So there we are, my killer is done. Channeling a little bit of Mike Myers there, as well as the other one from the set, using a very similar method. And I call this Creepy Scarecrow Vibes Guy. Yep, that's his official name from now on. Creepy Scarecrow Vibes Guy. Yeah, terrifying name, absolutely terrifying. So the games themselves are pretty fast paced. You can probably play them within an hour or so. It's very centric on atmosphere, investigation, terror mechanics. There's things like fright tokens, light tokens, terror. These all contribute to how your characters enact in the game and how you deal with the monster and how it deals with you as well. It's all very good fun. It's split into 4 phases. You have the fright phase, you have the killer phase, you have the character phase, and you have something called the end phase. Now, the fright phase, this phase represents the ambient horror in the environment, strange noises, flickering lights, that sort of thing, all represented by fright tokens. This is also where characters might get overwhelmed by terror and then fall victim to the killers. So really the purpose of this phase is to build up tension and to see how your characters are dealing with that situation at that moment. Then we move on to the killer phase. In this phase, the killer is controlled by an AI entity, though I think the rules kind of allow you to play with another character. So if I wanted to play as the killer and my mates want to play as the characters, then you could do that. AI entities are really, really good, but you can easily have a human do it if you really wanted to. And rightly so. So here the killers may vanish into the shadows, reappear somewhere else on the board, and then strike out on unsuspecting victims. Again, depending on which killer you pick, will have a different set of attributes, skills, weaponry, how they deal with certain character types or tropes more than others, or archetypes. Again, that depends on the characters you've got on the table. Of course, you've got the character phase, which is next. So this is where you get to activate all your characters, or the remaining ones, should I say. Now, they have different ways of activating. You can have 2 quick actions, or you can have a long action and a quick action. So a good example of quick actions are sort of like getting back up. You've been knocked to the floor, you're standing up. Investigatory actions or miscellaneous ones. And then you can do some melee or range attacks, but they're called snapshots. So they're kind of not well thought out attacks. They're kind of like reactive or panicked attacks, so they're not as accurate, probably not going to do that much damage. And again, your characters only have a limited amount of ammo as well, so when you look at like the kind of guns or weapons you have, they might only have like a selection of bullets. So like a handgun might only have like 4 bullets, a rifle might have 2 or 3 or whatever. So you've got to be quite careful on how you go about using your weaponry in this situation. So snapshotting them, probably not the wisest choice unless you're really, really desperate. Now, long actions are more considered. So like attacks can be more aimed or well thought out or planned ahead. So your melee attacks, your range attacks, you've considered a bit more about how you're going in for that fight. Also, other things like moving light tokens around. So you might be like there's a torch around or something like that. Now, light is super important because what that does is that kind of has a negative to the killer, but also gives your guys a bit of a boost. Removes terror markers. It's easy to spot the killer, so you can easily hit it and shoot it. Obviously, with an aimed attack, that's going to get benefits as well. In the dark, with a snapshot, hardly going to hit the killer. In the light, with a well-aimed attack, probably going to get the killer and wound it. So again, it's that kind of thing. There's loads of other stuff like investigating, hiding. You can hide as well. Then there's the end phase where you basically get to check to see if you've achieved your objective in the plot or if any effects have began or have ended. And then you move straight back on to the fright phase again for the next turn. So quite fast paced. Again, it's about finding where the killer is. And I love the fact that the killer can just pop out from one place, from another. A couple of jump scares maybe as well. Again, if you're playing with a bunch of mates at home in the dark, maybe by candlelight, you don't want to be in the dark because you won't see what's going off, then that kind of adds a lot more ambience to it as well. The thing I'll say about this game, it's a real big draw for me, is it moves away a bit from the classic I shoot you, you shoot me, smacky smacky, stabby stabby kind of games, which I do love and I play them a lot and I'm a big fan of them. Yeah, so I kind of like it because you're using more of the environment around you, you're kind of working as a team, stay away from the shadows, head towards the light kind of thing. So I do like that. Again, you can custom create, like I said, you can custom create your characters, the scenarios, the killers. There's rules for having vehicles in there if you want to. There's companions, so if you want a pet dog or a pet parrot or something like that, random thing to throw out there, you can do that as well. Again, lots of archetypes and different kinds of tropes you can pick from your favorite horror movies. But on top of the vehicles and all the other stuff, you can throw in some extra killers into the scenarios as well. So instead of having one killer, you can have multiple killers, and then have a great night with your mates trying to deal with more than one instead of, it could be one of those things like Cabin in the Woods kind of things where you got loads to deal with. That's quite good fun. On the website as well, check that out, because not only does it have all the other games, which I'll kind of quickly skirt over in a moment, but you can get the STLs, you get the physical products, PDFs if you want them. And there's a load of just add-ons. So like I said, there's the 1698 add-on, there's some characters you can get for that. And there's a bunch of killers you can buy, different types. One comes with their own cards. This is where you obviously get like your characters from as well. But you know, that's just there as an option. You don't have to use these. The cards are pre-made for them, so you don't have to do any thinking or planning out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of not only having the option for STLs, but getting the physical prints as well, because not everyone has a 3D printer. So having that's a big thumbs up for me from a company point of view. So good job. All in all, though, it's just a really good fun game. I really like the idea how it channels the horror vibes from certainly 80s movies that I used to watch as a kid. So fans of the channel will know, obviously I like talking about new games that come out, especially covering indie games or indie companies, and it was really nice of Blacksite Studios to send stuff out. They didn't have to, obviously I didn't pay for any of this, there was no obligation to do a video as well. It's just like, here's some of the stuff we've been working on, maybe something will float your boat, and honestly a lot of them will float my boat. It's just the problem I have is every time I manage to review one video about a game I found, like 3 more appear in its place. It's like Hydra but worse. So it's like every time I manage to get one, there's more. So it's a great place to be. There's lots of games to review. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of go over briefly the other ones that they sent through, and then maybe down the line try and cover some of those as well. So what I'm going to do now is just pull up some pictures of the books. It's not going to be an in-depth review of these. There's more like honorable mentions, like I said. I've not had a chance to look at a lot of these, so you know that there's a lot of books out there and a lot of games. But you got Violent Dark here. So the best way to describe this from looking through it is Aliens meets Dead Space. So like looking through the page of the book, I was getting like Alien vibes, the Nostromo crew, there's corporations in there, but obviously it's like a small tactical game of survival against the environments and whatever's on the ship. That's what it feels like. That's what it looks like. Again, cool looking art. Then you have Breacher. Both of these are by Matt Burns. Breacher feels more like a one-man army versus a load of nameless goons. Again, looking through the book, there's corporations involved. You get different types of breachers. Imagine John Wick, but corporations and cool looking near future gear, I guess is probably the best way to describe that. But yeah, they look fun. So then we have Night Thirst by Whittle Goblin, a battle royale game where clans of vampires duke it out in a long-honoured tradition where they put their differences aside to see who hunts and consumes the most blood before the sun sets. Sounds fun. If you like vampires, sounds like the game for you. If you like vampires and battle royale, sounds like the game for you. So here we have This Is Not a Test by Joseph Maguire. So the best way to describe this is Fallout meets Necromunda. So the visuals feel very Fallout, so you're looking through the book, but looking at like the mechanics, creation of the warbands, kind of style of fighting as well feels very Necromunda. Especially it's got like, feels like it's got the good parts of Necromunda and all the fun parts and visuals of Fallout, all post-apocalyptic, all wasteland based. I imagine there's other tropes in there as well, like don't forget Peachy, it's a bit like this film or a bit like this game. I'm like, okay, cool. It looks great, and that's probably might be one I might cover because I'm a big fan of Fallout and Necromunda. So this definitely feels like it could be another video in the making down the line. Then there's a game here called Hemetsu. So this is a solo co-op game set in a post-apocalyptic feudal Japan, where you play as hunters, humanity's last line of defense against mythical beasts. Creatures long thought to be legends, but I guess that panned out that was a lie and they're real and they're eating everybody. If you like samurai and monsters and post-apocalyptic feudal Japan, another game for you. So yeah, just a selection. Like I said, they sent a bunch through, lots to cover, lots to read. I don't get all the time in the world to read because jumping from one video to the next and doing all the paint guides kind of stuff, it kind of sucks up all my week. But there was a lot here for me to decompress. So if there's any from this list you like, Peachy, I would love you to cover this. Do chuck in the comments. I will happily cover it. Again, I'm going to say it one more time because I can't say it enough. The art in these books is amazing. Shout out to the writers, shout out to the layout designers, but the artists, oh my God. If you just like art, visuals, it's just really good. But as always, a massive thank you for watching. Big shout out to my patrons. You people are the best. Without your support, I couldn't do this. Random waffles about random games that get sent or find. Again, like I said, if you like some of the games I've talked about, do mention in the comments if you want me to cover them. It was meant to be a Halloweeny themed video. I didn't get around to getting dressed up or do like funky lights. Got a spider, forgot to put the pumpkins out. Sorry, Mrs. Peach, forgot to put the pumpkins out. If you forgive me. They look nice where they were and didn't want to move them. But yes, hope you enjoyed this. Again, it's just one of those things I like doing. I like covering random games or games that I've just discovered or games that have, you know, been put in front of me going, try this. So if you are others out there that you want me to look at or try out, do put them in the description. The list is getting big and I'm going to struggle to cover them all. I get lots of people reaching out going, I want you to cover my game. I'm like, cool, join the list. There's a lot. Oh, I'll try my best. I am. Like I said, if there's more of me, I could do it. But yeah, I'm at that point now where I'm just like, try my best to pick ones here and there. That's why I do like an end of year review as well. Of the ones I didn't quite cover. But yeah, thanks. Appreciate you all. You're the best. Have a great evening. If it's Halloween still and you're watching, have a great Halloween. If it's weeks later, I hope you had a best time. Hope you played some games and watched some movies or whatever it is you do. Eat lots of sweets. I'm going to do that. Eat lots of sweets. I love sweets. Anyway, waffled on a lot. Bye.